What a great afternoon it is to be here. My name is Tom Hoy. I'm the mayor from the great city of Taunton. I'd like to welcome all of you to Whites of Westport. Doesn't Senator Stephen Lynch have a nice ring to it? I'm so excited to be here on behalf of the city of Taunton and also many of our residents that are here today. Some of our firefighters and members of our building trades are here. We're all here for the same reason, to elect the best candidate and the best person that we possibly could to represent us in the United States Senate in Stephen Lynch. So again, I'm excited to be here, and my job right now is to introduce you to Westport's own State Senator Michael Roderick. Michael?
Wow, what a great turnout. Thank all of you for coming here, for showing up to support my good friend Steve Lynch for U.S. Senate. And we're going to need all of you over the next couple of weeks to get out, to knock on doors, to canvass, to do visibilities, and most importantly, on Election Day, to man the phones and to turn out the vote. I know what special elections are like. 16 years ago, I won my first race for state representative in a special election, and I won by 7 votes. So I know how important each and every vote is. And with all the help and energy and assistance from everybody in this room, I'm sure we will be successful in a couple of weeks. And we have a number of my colleagues, elected officials here. I'd like to introduce them. We have my colleague, Representative Alan Sylvia from Fall River. We have my good friend Mayor Tom Hoy. We have former Mayor Rosemary Tierney here. Former City Council President Linda Pereira. The veteran City Councilor David Alves. There he is, right in front. The veteran City Councilor Joe Lopes. Fall River City Councilor Brad Kilby. A very good friend and former colleague Jim Fagan from Taunton. His wife on the Taunton School Committee, Christine Fagan. We have a couple candidates for office. Candidate for New Bedford School Committee, Josh Amaral. Candidate for Fall River City Council, Ron Cabral. And thank all of you. No, I really mean it. Special elections are very funny. People aren't going to vote unless they're dragged out to vote. And it's our job, everyone in this room, to call every one of our friends, our neighbors, our family members, to drag them out to vote on April 30th for Steve Lynch, because Steve is, we need Steve in the U.S. Senate. 16 years ago when I was elected as a state rep, I was fortunate enough to be placed in the seat right behind Steve. We got to be friends right away. He went on to state Senate, and he served as my Senate chair on a number of committees. I followed him throughout his career. I got to know his better half, his wife Margaret, who's been down here a number of times on Steve's behalf. He's just a wonderful man, a wonderful family man, a tremendous congressman, and he'll be a tremendous United States Senator. It's now my great pleasure and honor to introduce another very good friend of mine, a gentleman who's doing an incredible job as our District Attorney Sam Sutter.
Well, let me begin by thanking all of you for coming here this afternoon for what I think is a very important occasion for the South Coast. And I want to thank Congressman, soon-to-be Senator Stephen Lynch, for reaching out to me and asking if he could sit down with me so that we could discuss whether I would endorse him. I was honored by that interest on his part. And so as I came over here this afternoon, thinking about what I was going to say and wondering exactly, I hope this comes out right, what I was going to wear, I went up to the attic because it was such a beautiful spring day, and my wife wasn't around to select my suit for me, as she usually does. And I saw this tan suit, and I thought to myself, You know, the last time I wore this suit, I was running my own race. And that got me thinking to one of the three reasons I'm going to give you this afternoon as to why I am so strongly with Steve Lynch. Because I also started thinking about a column that I read in the Boston Globe, and I can even give you the date and the time. Having breakfast by myself on a cold Friday morning, January 4th. And I read Joan Vinocchi's column in the Globe about how certain prominent individuals in the Democratic Party had decided that Congressman Ed Markey, I'm anointing Congressman Markey, should be the candidate of the Democratic Party, and not Steve Lynch, and not Mike Capuano, who was running at the time. Both of those individuals had achieved illustrious records in their political careers, but we're going to anoint Ed Markey. And that just rankled me, because gosh darn it, Democratic primaries are supposed to be democratic with a small d. In fact, to quote from that column, she wrote, "Voters, that's us, everybody, voters, not the party elite, should be the deciders. That's what democracy is all about." So that's reason number one why I'm endorsing Stephen Lynch for United States Senate. Reason number one. Reason number two, this is like the suit, I hope this comes out right too, is I just flat out like him and admire him. How can you not admire what he's achieved? His story reminds me of my own father's. Nobody handed him anything. He had to struggle and fight for every single thing that he achieved as he rose from South Boston to graduating from South Boston High, working during the day and going to school at night, achieving his degree, then doing the reverse, all while he was working as an iron worker, going to school during the day to get his law degree, working at night. And by the way, Jonathan Blodgett, my good friend in Essex County, I told him on the way in, told me he was one heck of a trial lawyer, which I also admire, since that was my craft for about 20 years. And so that's a story that I greatly admire and that all of us should admire. And he's somebody, because of his own story and his own roots, is never going to forget the regular folks of this state. And he will be back here constantly, in the South Coast, constantly. And by the way, I should also add this. When I finally got a chance to sit down with him, and we talked for about 45 minutes to an hour, right here, I believe. Right, or maybe it was over at the other place. Yes, the other place. That's fine. And my admiration just grew. In a business, politics, that unfortunately, as there are a lot of politicians in this room, and I'm one of them, has a lot of insincerity, ulterior motives, agendas. Here's a man who is down to earth, very straightforward, a very regular individual, and so because I like him, because I admire him, because I think he connects with all of us, that's reason number two why I'm endorsing Senator Steve Lynch. And finally, and most importantly, because the personal reasons are not as important as these reasons, I think Stephen Lynch, in fact, as I said to you, I had the chance to talk to a couple of reporters on the way in. I'm convinced, it's a strong word, I'm convinced that Steve Lynch is going to be the best United States Senator in this race by far for this area, for these three reasons. Reason number one, what are the three biggest issues facing this area, ladies and gentlemen? I'll tell you what they are. Jobs, schools, and public safety. And on those three issues, I think he is clearly, by a wide margin, the best candidate in this race. Jobs. Who is going to promote creating jobs and protecting workers' rights better than someone with his personal story and somebody who founded the Congressional Labor and Working Families Caucus, co-founded that. I'll tell you who. Senator Stephen Lynch. 2. Schools. I spent a little time studying this issue in my race. I think the biggest issues, at least 2 of the very biggest issues in schools, are number 1, early childhood education, and number 2, funding for our community colleges so that those can be centers where we are creating jobs for people in the particular area where the community college exists, like Bristol Community College, just around the corner from where I live. Who's going to be the best person in those areas? Early childhood education and the funding for the community colleges that we need? The person that's been deeply involved in these issues for 30 years, Senator Stephen Lynch. And finally, and this is the area that I know best, public safety. Who is going to be the best United States Senator for this issue, which is obviously what we, all of us here at the District Attorney's Office, and everybody in this room is so concerned about? Gun violence, drug abuse, drug dealing, law enforcement. I can tell you right now, at the risk of getting too personal here, this is a man who understands the gun violence issue, who lost his own cousin to gun violence, who has been speaking out on this issue from the time he got into politics, who I am positive I'm going to be able to have a great relationship with on what I consider to be the number 1, the preeminent issue in public safety today, and that is gun violence. He, as a member of the United States Senate, what they call the most exclusive club of 100 in the world, he is going to be a powerful force to get legislation that's before Congress and the Senate right now for better background checks, for doing something about assault weapons, for doing something about ammunition clips, something that I obviously feel very passionate about, and something as I look around this room, so many people in this room have been involved in making this a place where we have actually improved the gun violence statistics. So, because of his commitment to that, because of his commitment to another critical issue in public safety, which is doing something about what's called re-entry, when individuals who have gone to prison and jail are coming out of prison and jail, trying to make sure that instead of, and I represented a lot of these people when I was a defense attorney, instead of just trying to figure out what they are going to do next that doesn't involve getting back into the drug abuse syndrome, doing something so that we have a successful re-entry program in this county, in this state, and in this nation. So those are a lot of, I think, very good reasons why I am endorsing, now Congressman, but working together soon to be, Senator Stephen Lynch.
Thank you, Mayor Hoy. Thank you, Senator Rodriguez. It's an honor for me to be here with you all. Thank you for all your kind words. I want to thank all of the other elected officials that have been recognized earlier by Senator Rodriguez. Thank you all for coming. This is not my first visit, obviously, to the South Coast. We've been spending a lot of time. My wife and my daughter have also been down here quite a bit doing the senior events and meeting with the DAV and other groups as well. But I do want to give special thanks to a couple of people. When Mike Rodriguez asked me to come down early on in this campaign, he said, "Look, I'll have a couple of friends of mine take you around just so you'll know where to go. We want to have you go to a few bingos." And he said, "I'll have a couple of people take you around." So he handed me off to Linda Pereira back there, who actually drove me around for quite a while when I first came down here. Representative Alan Silva back there as well. There's Alan. So I saw, we did a what do they call a windshield tour And I was lucky to survive Linda's driving. I said, next time I'm bringing a helmet. No, it's been great. And I do have a wonderful relationship with the leadership here on the South Coast delegation. It's been an honor to serve with Mike when I was in the Senate. We were both, when I was in the Senate, he was in the House, and now obviously he's in the state Senate. We have wonderful leadership here, and among the very best in this room, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I do want to say, I know we see a lot of new faces, I know a lot of laborers here, but a lot of new faces as well. And just by way of introduction, I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a similar background to a lot of people in this room, and a lot of people who are making a living on the South Coast. My mom was a postal worker. My dad was an iron worker. I grew up in the public housing projects in South Boston, in a situation not unlike a lot of families on the South Coast. Families from Fall River and New Bedford, families from Westport. And I think I benefit from those experiences in the United States Congress right now. I went to work like my dad as an iron worker, strapped on a pair of work boots every single day for about 18 years. But I got into politics by accident, quite by accident. I have nobody in my family who's ever been in politics. I'm the first in my family. I have 5 sisters, but first in my family to go to college. But when I began ironworking, it's a very difficult trade, like a lot of trades that are performed by people in this room. I was ironworking, and I actually I got to work on issues. In ironworking, we have a lot of workers that get hurt and killed, probably more than any other trade in America today. So I got to work on safety issues to make sure that when, at the end of the day, people came home from work safely. I also went to a lot of wakes and funerals on behalf of workers who didn't. But I got active on speaking up for workers, and after a few years, when there was no work in Boston, I actually traveled around the country. And I got to appreciate that in areas of the country where I worked, where the unions were strong, the conditions were good, the pay was good, the safety was there on the jobs. But in areas in the South and the West of the United States where unions were weak, the conditions were more dangerous. So when I came back here, when we finally got work back in Massachusetts, I got active on safety issues here on behalf of the ironworkers. And they elected me as their president. But it was an odd situation because I thought when they elected me president of the ironworkers that I was going to be running the place. Only to find out that if I had to sneeze, I had to check with the lawyers. So I decided, since I didn't want to just run over and ask questions of the lawyers in making decisions, I thought I'd go back to law school. I went to law school at BC, and it was there, at Boston College Law School. I was doing an internship with a labor law firm. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to represent workers. I wanted to give back. So the firm said, the firm I was with said, yeah, you can do your internship here for 20 hours, but for 20 hours we want you to go out. We want you to work pro bono. We want you to do free legal work. You can do it anywhere you want, but we want you to represent people who cannot afford an attorney. So I went back to the housing projects where I grew up. And like I say, it was a tough place to grow up. It was an old housing project. There was asbestos in the pipes. There was lead paint on the windows with little kids running around. We had I started representing those families, to get rid of the asbestos, get rid of the lead paint. I was representing 80-year-old grandmothers that had a 3-floor walk-up when there was an empty apartment on the first floor with handicap access. And I started taking on some of the tougher issues like drug abuse. A lot of drug abuse in the project that I grew up in. A lot of drug abuse in every single city and town in this Commonwealth. I started representing those families, and after a while, they came to me, and there was gun violence as well. The gun violence that took my cousin Brian. Shot 8 times. Watched his daughter grow up without a father. So I know a little bit about that, about the burden that a family carries when something like that happens. It's a trauma it's just not violence on one person, it's violence on the whole family and on the community. So after a while, people started coming to me and say, you know what? We never, ever, ever see our elected officials down in the projects here. we never see them. We've got all these problems with guns and violence and domestic violence, and we never see our elected officials. So they said to me, and it started off with just a few families, they said, you know, if you ran for office, we would elect you. And then maybe you'd be getting a paycheck, because they knew I was doing all that work for free. And so after a few dozen families and then a couple of hundred families said to me, you ought to run for office, I did. I ran against a 6-year incumbent, a nice man, but wasn't really engaged in the community, wasn't really rolling up his sleeves to work for the people. So I got elected state representative, and about 14 months later, the Senate president at that time, Bill Bulger, stepped down, and I put my name in, and I ran against his son to be senator. That's where Mike and I became friends. And about, funny how life is a circle. A short while later, I was in the U.S. Senate, the state Senate for a little while. Getting ahead of myself. I was in the state Senate for about 6 years, and I actually worked a lot with Mike in those days, and I worked with Congressman Joe Moakley. He was my congressman. He was a mentor to me, a great friend. And funny how life is a circle. My two uncles, Yappa and Sleepy, they were his, yeah. My dad had a bunch of brothers. They sound like the Seven Dwarfs, you know, but they kind of look like the Seven Dwarfs. But my two uncles, Yappa and Sleepy, ran Joe's first campaign back in 1952. They were terrible. I think they drank up all the profits. You know? And Joe lost that election, but he never forgot the favor and how hard they worked for him. So when I ran for the United States Congress, after Joe passed away, Joe's two brothers, Bobby and Tommy, both endorsed me, and with their help, they gave me a lot of credibility. They said, this is Joe's guy. And so I won the race for the United States Congress. And since I've been in the United States Congress, I've tried to be a voice of reason, a voice of independence. And I think the one thing that sets apart my representation, like the representation of Mayor Hoy and Sam Sutter and Senator Rodriguez, is that I read the bills, I read them closely, and I base my decision on what is the best thing to do on behalf of the people that I represent. I take a position of independence. If a bill is good, if it's good for the kids that I represent, and the seniors that I represent, and the veterans that I represent, and the people that are struggling that I represent, then I vote for it. I don't care who sponsored it, I vote for it. And if there's on the other hand, if there's something that's out there that's bad, that's going to do them harm, or I don't think it should happen, then I vote against it, regardless of who's pushing it. I really try to take a position of independence. And I made it clear when I arrived in Congress, you know, I said, with all due respect, you got some great leadership down here, but I made a point of saying that I don't work for Nancy Pelosi. I don't. I respect her very much, but I don't work for her. I got 727,514 bosses already back in the district back home, and I work for them. And you can't serve two masters. So on occasion, I've gotten in trouble with my party. I haven't voted the way they told me to vote, but you know, I think that's good. I think that you need some independence and some common sense when you go to the United States. It's kind of like right now. It's kind of like right now. Last week, my president, and look, I love President Obama, but his administration, the Republicans sort of got him boxed in this situation with taxes and revenue and all that. And he came out last week with a proposal to cut Social Security. And look, I just want to say I love my president, but every once in a while I think he gets boxed into a bad idea. And last week it was to restrain, to cut Social Security, growth in Social Security on behalf of our seniors. And that is a core issue within the Democratic Party, I believe. That's a promise from generation to generation. That, you know, with all due respect, I think my job now is to try to to try to convince people that that's not a good road to go down. We have about 68% of seniors today in retirement who rely on Social Security for most of their income in retirement. If the Democrats and if government is not for protecting Social Security, if we are not for protecting the most vulnerable people in our society, seniors who can't go out and get another job at that point in their lives, if we can't protect them, then what are we there for? What are we there for? So, and just to put a finer point on that issue, right now today in America, we don't increase the Social Security of citizens on Social Security in a fair way right now, because we have a thing called the Consumer Price Index, and it doesn't really measure the true cost of increase of living for seniors. It puts in, well, let's put it this way. Seniors, most of the seniors' increase in costs is in health care. And with health care going almost straight up, every year seniors are pulled back a little bit further behind. And so now, if we put change CPI as the formula, which would pull it back even further, the growth in the cost of living adjustments even further, then seniors over time will fall further and further behind. There's ways to fix Social Security by increasing the cap. How much?
There you go.
Yeah, if people are earning $1 million a year, they shouldn't only be taxed on $113,000, which is what they're being taxed right now. Tax them on the whole $400,000. So that's my story, and I'm running for the United States Senate because the United States Senate has become a very elite group. It's a very select group of people, basically. I mean, we got a great senator down there in Liz Warren. We're very lucky to have her. She's smart, she's articulate, and she's the real deal on consumer protection, no question about it. But aside from her, there are not a lot of people down there who have shared our experience. When I look around this room, I hate to tell you this, but there's nobody like you down in the United States Senate. There's nobody like me. Now, I'm not saying that every member of the United States Senate should have strapped on a pair of work boots and know what it's like to work really hard. I'm not saying that every U.S. senator should have stood in an unemployment line and knows what that feels like, not knowing where your next job's coming from, not knowing what you're going to do next when the bills are piling up. I'm not saying that every U.S. senator should have gone to school nights and weekends and struggled with student loans to get through college. I'm not saying every United States senator should have done that, but I am saying that at least one should have.
Absolutely.
We have serious challenges on the South Coast, no question about it. And I think that my style of leadership, the way I've responded to the issues already in my district, we have a serious drug problem in South Boston. I had one of the most difficult situations that an elected official could face in my district. In my district, we had a period when I was in the Senate and when I first started the House, we had a situation where we had 14 young men take their own lives. 14 young men between the ages of 14 and 17 take their own lives over an 18-month period. The most difficult time in my life, without exception. Going to 14 wakes and 14 funerals. Now, a lot of that happened because of involvement with OxyContin. Not all of it, but a fair amount of it. Kids got trapped by OxyContin, then they went to heroin, and there was no way out. They were trapped. They were trapped. And so I was faced with something that I don't think a lot of a lot of elected officials are faced with. How do you deal with that? How do you respond to their families? And we were losing a kid every few weeks. So we were desperate for help. I went to my local health center. I got some docs to help me. I went to the local hospital, at that time New England Medical Center, now it's Tufts, for some help there. I contacted the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, to get some help on suicide prevention. I went to the Department of Public Health in Massachusetts and brought in some experts. I brought the neighborhood together, the city together. Then I went to a local factory. The problem we were having is that at that time in our state, all of our substance abuse and residential treatment facilities were for adults, because that's what we were dealing with. We were dealing with adult substance abuse. Now we were dealing with adolescent substance abuse. I went to a local factory, and nobody wanted to site one of those facilities in their neighborhood. You know, not in my backyard, but it was their kids. So finally, I got a local factory to give me some space, a few thousand square feet. And I went to my brothers and sisters in the unions. God bless them. God bless them. They came in, iron workers, laborers, carpenters, tin knockers, boiler makers, pipe fitters, elevator constructors, crane operators, painters. They came in, all of them, on their own time, on their own dime, and built this space into what is now called the Cushing House. I named it after Cardinal Cushing. We started out with 14 beds. 14 beds, one for every kid that we lost. And then we've been expanding that since. And we're saving lives. We're saving lives. We got 14 beds, but I probably got 150 kids in line waiting to get in. And then, of course, we're having similar problems, not the suicides, but serious drug problems with our girls, too. And so, about 2.5 years later, I was able to build the Cushing House for girls. And we're saving lives there. The point of the story is that solving that problem wasn't going to be accomplished by sitting in Washington, D.C. and scratching out a bill. That's not the type of leadership that was called upon in that situation. You had to roll up your sleeves. You had to suck it up, and you had to be there. You had to be there for those families and for those kids. That's the type of leadership that I think is needed in Fall River and New Bedford and the rest of the South Coast. That's the type of leadership that I think it takes to get us through these tough times. And I'm not taking attendance on any other member of Congress. All I know is my style is coming home. You know, the most important relationship I have in Washington, D.C. is my relationship with you and your families. And that's who I represent. And I won't forget that in the United States Senate. I just want you to know that. About me. It's not about me, and I won't do this by myself. But I know the delegation we have here. I know the type of people we have. They're diggers, they're workers. They really are. You're blessed. You're blessed by the people you've elected down here. And I would be honored to be part of the South Coast delegation, to be able to work in Taunton and Fall River and New Bedford, because there's a future out there. There's a future out there. And we just got to work hard. Our best days here, let me tell you something, they are out there. We just got to buckle down. We got to solve our problems, work at it together, and we can do anything. We can do anything. We got to do that. We got to do that not only for ourselves, but we got to do that for the kids that are being born every day here. We got to do that for the seniors who are looking to spend their golden years here. We got to make sure that the jobs are there for our kids coming out of high school and college. We got to make sure that they're prepared and that the American dream is really there for them. So we're doing it for all those reasons, all good ones. And I just want the chance to go there on your behalf. All I'm asking is I want to be your champion. I want to go to work for you. I want to fight for you. I'll never take a back step on your cause. and I'll be very, very honored to serve you all and all the families on the South Coast in the United States Senate. God bless you all, and thank you.